Hi ho, Chemical Frog here, and I just wanted to say that I approve Geeks 5 Ever on Facebook.
Yee-hoo! This is Geeks 5 Ever, and I approve this message.
I'm Andy. I'm Noel. I'm Brad.
And we're Hunters of Science, and this is Geeks 5 Ever.
What is up, everyone? This is Jesse GOKU, and welcome to another Geeks 5 Ever podcast. The Geeks 5 Ever has hit so many milestones. We have been interviewing so many people, and we're finally getting to the point where we're talking to other conventions outside of the state. With me today is the con chair for Hentaicon and one of the other staff members for this very same con. They're going to talk to us today. They're going to tell us all about the con. We're going to get to know them, and we're going to find out what makes this con tick, exactly where it is, when it is, and what's going on. What's up, guys? Please introduce yourself to the audience.
All right. Yeah, thanks for reaching out, and thanks for having us. I am the con chair for Hentaicon. And then we also have James, our head of gaming.
How's it going, guys?
So before we begin, I'd like to make this disclaimer because we do post it in the beginning of the video, but we're going to go ahead and say it right now for the people that don't like to read. The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect those of the other admins of Geeks 5 Ever or the sponsors. And because of the sudden change of direction with the podcast, all podcasts from this point forward, because of the interview with Under Subsidence, are now for mature audiences only. Now, with that being said, Hentaicon, man. So when you say Hentaicon, the first thing that comes to mind is Hentaicon is it an adult convention?
Yes. With Hentaicon, our goal is to be the first, best, and prime location. Excuse me. I had this better. Let me try that again. We have Hentaicon is the first adult 18+ fandom convention. Like your normal anime cons or your comic cons, except you have to show your ID to get in. There will be no worrying about if the cosplayer you're talking to turns out to be 12, which I know has happened to a number of us over the years.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, if you're like me, when you're a little older, you don't go for like the really young looking chicks so much as you used to back in the day.
Yeah, this is true. But sometimes it's nice to know that if you are talking to somebody and you're not sure the age, then at the very least, you know they're 18.
That is definitely something that I'm down with. You know, it's always good to know exactly who you're talking to and exactly how to know that they're at least legal in the country and in that state, versus having to ID them at the door every time you just want to have a drink or talk or even give them a hug.
Exactly.
Yeah, and to echo his sentiment, I usually do a lot of security at conventions, so one of the few things that we always worry about with the 18 and up stuff is that we have to keep checking IDs constantly, so this eliminates that, which is a good thing overall.
Right. Yeah, the only possible ID checking that'll happen is if your badge isn't visible or if you're in the 21+ events area where alcohol may be served.
Have you ever thought about now a lot of conventions don't like, okay, me and Mr. James have worked together before for previous conventions in Texas, maybe not the same conventions, but we have cross paths when it comes to the line of work in the state of Texas, like Delta H-Con, and that's really the only one that I can think of right now. I worked for A-Con 1 year, and I vowed that I would never I would never volunteer for another convention after that. But, you know, as someone who's only attended family-friendly environment cons, you know, this is definitely a breath of fresh air when it comes to the adult environment, because I prefer a much more adult environment rather than the shared atmosphere that we normally get with any other anime or Comic-Con.
Yes, where most anime conventions and almost all Comic Cons or fandom conventions, they are always family friendly. Everybody's welcome. They can come in. That's great. Now, I'm going to give you a brief history on Hentaicon, if that's all right.
No, okay. I mean, you're totally going to answer one of my questions that I was going to ask you.
All right, perfectly. Hentaicon has been a concept convention of mine personally since I first started attending fandom conventions about 15 years ago. And the first one I attended was Anime Vegas back in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And I figured Vegas, hey, this is going to go great. And they had 30 voice actors that year. It was the largest assemblance of voice actors, I believe, to date, but I can be wrong. And I started thinking over time as I spent about 5 or 6 years where all I would do is work and go to conventions year round, where I was hitting at least a minimum of 5 conventions a year. And then majority of those were anime conventions, and then a local. And then after a while I went from attending to wanting to get involved with conventions and started doing panels. Well, started doing advertising for a local anime convention, and then started doing panels, and then just kept going from there. And as far as Hentaicon comes, most anime conventions will have an 18 plus panels or events, and very few get away with actually meeting the 18 plus expectations, meaning having hentai AMVs or adult discussions of that nature. Most conventions get limited because they're family friendly, where they have to keep things at an R-rated level of discussion and no further. There was a one-year convention, anime convention, which sadly never repeated, where they followed through with it, where they had a hentai viewing room, where voice actors ended up showing up talking about their experiences, and a number of them saying that yes, they have voiced hentai and they're proud of the work they've done, but they can't talk about it that much because of the family-friendly nature. And over time, you start noticing that there's restrictions on cosplay or just on discussions, fan art, artist alley restrictions, and it makes it difficult because each city has their own restrictions, their own guidelines they have to meet. And so the history of this convention is Hentai Convention, or Hentaicon, this is the third legitimate attempt to get this convention off the ground. And FYI, we are not affiliated with Hentai-Con, which spun out of Anime Expo or became known as the Hentai Festival. And their Facebook page, their website, all of their media pages are still up, and they still have a registration open, even though that their convention date was in 2014. And it just got downgraded. I don't know any of the politics behind it, except that I'm thinking they didn't market it, they didn't push it, because most people think hentai, most people think tentacles or worse. But for my end of it is, after being to a number of conventions and events, anime conventions, where people are being let down and disappointed because the 18 plus panels and discussions are having to be censored and edited, and people aren't getting what they want. Some people end up having room parties, but it still doesn't have that kind of convention attitude because it's in an unofficial capacity. What we are planning is we are planning to have our first year in Las Vegas.
Okay.
And that is for a number of reasons. Las Vegas holds a number of porn conventions year round. And when it comes down to it, Hentai Convention or Hentaicon is a porn convention.
Right. Well, I mean, for the audience, because and I'm going to take this time to explain what hentai is briefly, because we have a lot of comic book fans, we have a lot of non-anime fans, and we also have, believe it or not, we also have some non-comic book and anime fans.
Okay. And if you want, I can cover that.
Okay, cool. So, you know, as you know, when we say Geeks 5 Ever, we don't just cover comics and anime.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, didn't mean to cut you off, but yes, this convention is a pure. It's going to be Comic-Cons for adults. Hentaicon is the banner name, and it's what the primary focus is. But we're not going to turn. We're going to have panels on American comics and everything fandom related, yaoi fandoms, you name it, any shipping. But to cover the basis, you have your regular all ages anime. There are 3 levels of anime. There is the all ages regular genre anime. You have your ecchi anime, which will show fan service, panty shots, breasts, and basically to the point where it becomes borderline pornography. And then there's hentai, which is right out porn, but in an animated format. And there are many different types and genres, as there are with all media. And there are a lot of it is in a comic format. There is the original stories or original comics or manga, and then there's the fan comics based on an established property, which is known as doujinshi, which is a fan-made comic. And there are many of those on the internet, and I think the one thing I didn't cover was anime is anything that is animated in Japan. Not anime like, say, Avatar: The Last Airbender, where it's in an anime style, but it's animated in the United States.
Right. And okay, well, you said this is your first year.
This is the first year of the convention. Yes, we are currently raising our funds for our first year.
Okay. Wow, because when we spoke to James and and I'm totally sorry, I probably should have researched the convention more. I assumed that you guys had already been established as a convention, because I did accidentally maybe associate you with another con with a similar name. It definitely wasn't Hentai-Con, because I'd never heard of Hentai-Con. But
yeah, it's Hentai-Con. But yeah, we are. This is a first-year convention.
So, as you know, as somebody that attended cons to somebody that worked for a con to someone that's now running a con, how does that process work? How does this make you feel? Like, are you nervous? Are you stressed? Are you excited? You're just like, do you have
It's somewhat of an emotional roller coaster, I'll admit. The process of it, of deciding to, is pretty much like starting any convention. Getting a group of friends together, sitting around talking, whether it's your local comic shop or meeting up with a bunch of friends at one of the new Pokestops, making new friends and going, hey, let's create a pure Pokemon convention. And going from there, where on my end, I've batted the idea around with people over the years going, why isn't there an adult convention? And most people would tell you, well, it's not going to happen. You're going to get too much backlash from different communities, organizers. And even when, it's funny, because when I initially put up this page as a concept page, finding out, is there enough interest in a convention like this to actually happen? Where that's initially what the Facebook page was, just a concept page of going, who actually wants this to happen? Is there enough interest and enough of an attendance level that would warrant having even just a small first-year hotel-based convention of 500 attendees or less? And if that's ending up what we do, we can always build from there. But as far as the emotions, it's more or less, we want this to happen because there is a demand for it. It's just the majority of people we end up talking with, they're either shy or they don't want people they know to find out that one of their turn-ons is hentai, because hentai does have a lot of misconceptions. There is kind of the social stigma that all it is Japanese schoolgirls being molested by tentacles. And when it's basically like romance novels in the aisle at your local grocery store, where that's softcore pornography for readers, where there, and that's the thing, there's pornography in all mediums, whether it's audio, visual, the written word, you name it. I mean, fanfiction.net. That's one of the biggest sources, and a lot has come out of that, like 50 Shades of Grey. It's Twilight fan fiction. For those who don't know, fan fiction is a written story by you set in an established universe of Twilight, Harry Potter, you name it, based around those characters. And there is, of course, all ages fan fiction, and then there is the adult fan fiction. But this convention is kind of a dream goal of being able to stand out and say, you know what? Yeah, I enjoy it. I don't have a problem with who knows it. And that's the thing, is people would, when some of the initial backlash that came out was, and some of the initial questions that came out when the concept page was posted was within 14 hours, there was a news article already written about it, which was a happy surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And we went through the comments on their website, and in an official capacity went in and responded to people's questions, which people were surprised. People were happy that we were answering them. And some of the initial questions and comments were along, this is going to give anime a bad name. This is going to ruin the cosplay community or make it worse looked upon. And then some of the initial questions are things like, how are you going to keep underage kids out? How are you going to, what are the limitations or restrictions on cosplay, etc.?
Yeah. Well, okay. And we, I am going to apologize because at some point during this meeting, within the next few minutes or so, it's going to cut off, but we'll come back. But I've been meaning to ask you about that. So, okay, first off, let's go back to that comment where people were saying that this is going to ruin the community, or this is going to give anime a bad name, or, you know, let's talk about the community a little bit, because as a group, as we're mostly in Texas.
Yes.
So, one thing that I can say about the anime community here in Texas is it really, really sucks. And I can only imagine, and I don't know what it's like in over there in Nevada.
Well, for me, I actually live in Utah.
Okay.
And most people have said, well, why not just have it there? And I just laughed and said, yeah, that's an uphill fight. And honestly, Vegas is right next door. And even though Vegas itself is trying to become a bit more family oriented,
that's not going to happen.
it's still Sin City.
Right. I mean, Las Vegas is the home of $5 lobster and happy endings only if you pay a little extra.
Exactly. And that's the thing with Las Vegas, they hold an annual porn conventions in Vegas several times a year. One of the biggest is the Adult Entertainment Expo. It's where fans can go and meet your favorite porn stars.
Mm-hmm.
And see all the new adult entertainment technology that's coming out. All the new VR craze, or love dolls, and everything else. That's a convention that I will hopefully be attending next year to talk with vendors, to talk with potential guests, and to go from there. I've usually just watched the footage from on Hulu or from Stars, because they usually do a live broadcast of it each year. Now, as far as the community goes, the community is going to be different in each location or each place you live. And the community will dictate is, now, depends on what you mean by community. Do you mean the online community? Or do you mean the people you actually see at a local anime club, comic shop?
Well, when you talk about the community, anime as a whole, we're talking about the community as a whole, because at the end of the day, the internet is just an instrument used to either carry the agenda of the community or help tear the community further apart. Because you really don't, the internet community is vital and is very important, but when it comes down to it, the main community is the in-person interaction.
Exactly. And
I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to jump in on the community thing real quick, guys.
Go ahead, James.
And yeah, well, I'm also from Texas, and yeah, in Texas, I'm not trying to be this big jerk, but the community is pretty toxic. Even here in a different city, Jesse's in Houston, I'm in San Antonio. But in my opinion, the best thing to do when you have something like that is think outside the box and draw another medium such as hentai and try to work around that, because we're a little bit more mature, I believe. So I like the idea, and that's why I'm backing Hentaicon in general.
Well, the problem with the community, and I don't mean to be, and like I'm saying, folks, like the opinions expressed on this show, and this is for mature audiences only. But when it comes down to cosplaying, when it comes down to anime, especially cosplaying here in Texas, in the anime community with all the anime cons, people don't like to admit it. They don't want to admit it, but at the end of the day, it's just a giant dick swinging a contest, and that's really where it tears itself apart.
Where it's more of who's better than who.
Right.
And so it's just a giant pissing contest. Oh yeah, well I spent a full year on my cosplay and you only spent a week, so mine's better by default. And I'm just gonna, yeah. There is that attitude no matter where you go. There's one one gal who is in who's a part of our Facebook group, who is from Greece or Turkey, who has talked with me a bit about how she is wanting to do anything she can to come to this convention, because there is basically no community there, and anime itself is looked upon and shunned. And it hurts me to hear that there's still that kind of prejudice about it out there. And I had started hoping that things had started evolving and gotten better. But I do know that, yes, around the world it is still shunned because sex is such a taboo, where you can have as much blood, guts, and gore as you want, but God forbid you see a nipple.
I'm gonna go ahead and interrupt you there. We'll be back. We're gonna take a short break. Unfortunately, we are using a program that's gonna kick us off anyway in less than 2 minutes. So we'll be back. We'll start up the conversation again. We'll continue from where we picked up. So you, the listeners, won't notice the skip because we're gonna go straight to the next conversation. But you guys stay tuned because I'm gonna go ahead and pick up the conversation there.
All right.
Okay.
All right, guys, we're back. Sorry about the cutoff. Unfortunately, this program does have its cons as well as its pros. But we're back with the director of Hentaicon and the gaming director as well. I have had me and James have known each other for years, and we're part of the community. We were just talking about the community, and before we were talking about some of the backlash or some of the bad press that people get when they're doing any kind of event. Now, here's the thing. Anything you do could always have a backfire consequence on you. Now, I run Geeks 5 Ever. I started Geeks 5 Ever. I originally started Geeks 5 Ever as part of the Houston Nerd Society, but unfortunately our relationship went sour. And then after a year later, I decided to turn what had already been around into Geeks 5 Ever. Now we had less than 100 likes. Actually, I think we only had like 20 likes. But now we're at our 400 like marker on Facebook, and we're only like 20 away from 100 subscribers. So we were established back in March. So it's been less than a year. It's been one hell of a ride. And one of the things I'm faced with when it comes to running the group is, should I do a podcast with these people? Should I not do a podcast? Who should I do the podcast with? Should I approach these people? Are they going to approach me? Advertisers? Because right now, like when it comes down to it, I pretty much run everything. And so when it came down to talking to Hentaicon, I decided to, yes, I did think, okay, well, maybe that's going to make us look bad. But I didn't give it much thought. I'm like, no, you know what? We're part of the community. That is definitely part of the community. whether people want to accept it or not. Hentaicon, hentai in itself, it's its own genre. It is part of anime, but at the same time, it's really not. It's more of its own thing, and that's why we don't worry about the backlash as much. I know there's gonna be a ton of it. There's gonna be a ton of people that have bad things to say, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But as me and James said, the community in itself here in Texas, I'm not sure about Utah or anywhere else, but it's very toxic because people don't really, they want respect and yet they don't want to give it. They don't want to respect other people's interests or their taste or the way they dress, whether they bought the cosplay, whether they made the cosplay, whether they like this fandom or they're part of that fandom, whether they don't eat ramen or whether they do eat ramen. And it's such a double-edged sword. And here in Texas, it's such a breath of fresh air because when I first heard about Hentaicon, the thing that I thought was the Japanese anime pornography, and that's what hentai is. It at the end of the day, you can try to make it sound fancy as you want, but at the end of the day, it's pornography. It is part of the adult industry, and so, and that's one of the things that concerned me as well. Like, is it? I knew your main I know the center, the foundation is hentai. Like, that's what you're driving at. But is it like 50% hentai and then 20% gaming and then 20% other anime and then or 10% or 5% comics and then 5% other fandoms? And that's the thing about anime cons is that they don't, a lot of them are dying out here in Texas because they're trying to stay pure anime. And that doesn't work anymore. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly. And that happened with you. That's been kind of a rockety thing with Utah's anime convention, Anime Bonsai. Now, I've heard of HENTAI-CON. I've talked with people who've gone to it. And every year, there's always the good and the bad with each convention. Bonsai had their 10th anniversary, and even they tried to go towards just a pure, unless it's made in Japan or Japan related, that they weren't going to allow it. And that kind of upset majority of people I heard and talked with, and even some of the panels I ran. And that was kind of they listened and then opened it back up because anime conventions should become more of a melting pot when it comes to fandoms. Now, as far as the community here in Utah, there was a national survey that went out to find out which state was the geekiest of all, and it turned out Utah was number one as far as geeks fandoms, and we have at least 1 or 2 new fandom conventions starting up each year. There is a convention, for instance, there's a convention called Hentaicon, which happened 2 years ago, and they are trying to get their second year off the ground when it's all fantasy based. For the fantasy sword and sorcery, they had almost the entire cast of Lord of the Rings. And if you get the chance, go and look up Hentaicon, look at the things they did for their convention to keep it kind of fantasy specific, but they're not going to turn away Doctor Who fans or Star Trek fans because ultimately those are all fantasy. There's another convention starting this year called FearCon, which is a horror convention.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's Salt Lake Comic-Con and Anime Bonsai. Those are the premier conventions. But Anime Bonsai was the first and is the largest fandom convention in our state. And they only top out at about 5,000 attendees. And that's the thing. When it comes to Hentaicon, we're going to try and keep it all balanced. We're not just going to say, oh, well, gaming, we're only going to have just off in one room. If there's enough demand and interest for it, it could be on the main floor, depending on what vendors or which interactive displays we can get. And as far as that, I'll actually turn it over to James for a minute since he's the head of our gaming.
Right. And basically what he echoed, we're trying to be more balanced than just one direction like anime per se, because I'm just coming at this from a gamer's perspective. And I mean, no disrespect to all the other conventions out there, but gaming in most conventions is very poorly managed, especially in anime, where it's, for the most part, like you said, just one room or two rooms and that's it. So my first goal with gaming is, yeah, we're starting out, so I'm not trying to do too much over the top. But the same end, if I have to be small, we're going to do it in a way that it's not going to be just, oh, I'm here playing Nintendo and that's it. Mostly, we're going to focus on console gaming first, being kind of like the come here and get together thing. But also, in the long haul, we want to bring people together to do something other than, let's be honest, play Smash Brothers for 4 hours a day, because unfortunately that really doesn't get very far with a hentai convention or generally any kind of gaming convention. So we're also focusing on mostly party games. Of course, the obvious choices would be like Cards Against Humanity, things like that nature. But as a gamer and knowing how games work, 90% of all hentai is going to be directed toward a PC game system. So,
just to chip in with you, there's a number of ecchi console games, and then there's also a lot of the PC games are either flash based or like the meet and fuck games or the dating sims.
Right. I mean, there are some, like you said, most of the ones that are on consoles are ichi, and like you said, also there are a ton of flash games. So it's not like you don't have many options out there. It's just right now the big ones such as Sexy Beach and Artificial Girl are pretty much PC based. And also to add on to it, there are some MMOs, eMove comes to mind to start off, that you could really push at these kinds of conventions. Again, it's something to get you into the door, but I'd like to think, we want to keep going at something more like a party atmosphere. So
exactly. Like the kind of the RPG that you're trying to build and write for it.
Right. I just wanted to bring this up. It's not exactly an RPG, but it is kind of along the same lines. I did want to make this kind of on the Geek 5 Ever podcast as well. I've come up with a kind of a game that's basically, it's storytelling made with a 12-sided die, and it's really simplified, where it's not just you have a character automatically, you just fight monsters. It's more like very simple storytelling. And I'm going to say this now so everybody can hear it. It's going to be debuting at HENTAI-CON, actually, and I want to make sure that this isn't exactly a 18 and up game per se, but the way I'm going to try to go about it for Hentaicon, it will be more catered to 18 and up play. And I'm going to quickly it's harder to speak about it than play, but I'm going to try to make this quick. Basically what happens is you have one person who picks whatever character you can think of. It doesn't necessarily have to be hentai. It could be, for instance, at My Little Pony, although in our convention it would be more of an adult theme. But basically what they do is they go through a usual mundane day. It's kind of like a day in the life. where they go out and play basically their character, and they roll dice to determine how well or how bad their day gets. Well, that alone's pretty fun. And then there's another person who's basically directing the action based off those dice rolls.
Yeah.
So it's really simple, but again, if I have to explain it, it's going to take me like 3 hours. It's better just to
Easier to play and show than just explain.
Yeah, I think for a first-year conventions, that's probably one of the best ways to go anyway. But this is like really simple. Anyone can do it.
Exactly. And as far as the gaming, it's like there will be other adult party games that you can obviously find in Spencer's or an adult boutique where they have specific adult party games where you roll the dice where, okay, kiss this part of the body or lick that part of the body or whatever.
Whoa. Sounds like a party.
And that's the thing is nothing. Most conventions will tell you that no, you're not going to be shamed for your particular fandom. Well, at this convention, you're not going to be shamed for what gets you off, as long as it's not violating any laws. And of course, nothing illegal would happen at the convention. And back to what I was saying earlier is a number of the questions and concerns that were coming about the convention, about will it ruin the cosplay community? And the answer is no. The cosplay community in general knows where it stands. The majority of it is that you see on Instagram, Tumblr, and Facebook is the sexualization of it. I have no problem with it. And that's the thing is people like Jessica Negri made their fame based on it. So you can't really say it's going to ruin the community because that's kind of like, really? How's it going to be ruined? It's we're only spotlighting it, and that's what you're afraid of. Recently in Australia, they had a giant adult entertainment convention called SKYPE, where they had a $5,000 cash prize cosplay contest.
Well, I mean, and I'm sorry to interrupt you on there, but the fact, and we're gonna go back to that, and then I'm gonna talk to a little bit about gaming. So the problem with a lot of these, the sexualization of cosplay was inevitable. It was going to happen because just like anything else that is, because at the end of the day, conventions need to make money. Otherwise, they can't run.
Exactly. And what's the first rule of advertising? Sex sells.
Right. And it's just like, well, that's so terrible because we're using women to. I'm sorry, but when it comes to women, when you're advertising to women, you're going to get a guy who has the shape on his abs.
Exactly. You're going to get someone like Chris Helmsworth to take off his shirt and be the sex symbol, to be the eye candy for women.
Like, you know, it's like back in the 90s, man, when Pepsi advertised, they had this half-naked girl, and like, you didn't know what it was about, but she was moving around, and then at the end of it, she's like, Pepsi, and then all of a sudden, you're like, whoa, man, I need to start drinking Pepsi now.
Exactly. And, or modern day, look at Carl's Jr.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, with the girl? Yeah.
They helped to make Kate Upton who she is because of their commercials. And that's the thing. We wouldn't be, as to borrow your phrase, using a girl. No, any cosplayers who openly want to help the convention, advertise for the convention, they're all for it. Our first official guest is the first XXX cosplay group, the Pixel Vixens. They are a XXX cosplay, and they're growing just as much as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. They reached out to us, and some questions we get on our site is, will we have any artists there? And we definitely have our wish list for which hentai or adult comic artists we want to see. We also have a cosplay guest wish list, and we do have two other guests who we can't officially name yet. But once the convention gets going, or once we get our initial funding and we are able to get our Kickstarter going, we have a number of artists and cosplayers who are all on board. We even have been in talks with an adult fetish model who is interested in coming to the convention. We have a number of cosplayers and everybody who finds out about this convention, who gets excited about it, wants it to happen, wants to be a part of it. And initially, some cosplayers I've talked with at different conventions since we set the page up is initially they'll go, well, I'll consider attending depending on how the convention is done.
Right. I have so I'm gonna. This is a little off topic, and this is really bad of me for asking. How does one throw their name in the hat to be a guest for the con? For anybody who wants to attend the convention as a potential guest, all they have to do is contact the main page on Facebook and message us, and then we can start communicating with them as far as what their requirements are, and if they're just looking for room and board, or if they're wanting financial compensation. And those are things that have to be worked out later. But just for the initial interest of going, yes, I'm just a general cosplayer who wants to come as a guest. It'll depend. There will be a lot of little factors that we're still working out as far as what we can offer, mm-hmm. and what we can give. Because the majority of the stuff we can do right now is nothing more than advertising trade, because this convention sadly can't come out of personal pocket, because we have our day lives, families, and jobs. And as much as I would personally like to go get a loan and fund this out of pocket, this is why we have a two-pronged crowdfunding campaign, is that if people really want this to happen, it's going to happen through the fans. Okay, and the reason why I asked is because, I'm not a cosplay. I am a cosplayer, but I'm not like an adult cosplayer, even an elaborate. I'm not a very well-known cosplayer. But the thing that I am is, okay, so we worked for my group worked for Comic Palooza in Houston, Texas, in this past June, and we hosted 12 panels, and we're also working at Delta H-Con. And so far, they're still updating the list. So far, we have 6 panels. We really wanted 15, and we're going to Japan and San Antonio. And I don't know what's going on with their schedule, because they haven't told me what's been approved and what hasn't. And with Onicon in Galveston, Texas, I've already submitted, and I pretty much already have like a guaranteed spot, because I go every year, and every year I host the same events. But we do a lot of adult entertainment. I do a lot of stand-up. As far as we're mostly comedy, adult comedy based. So like we've been throwing our hat in as panelists right now, but we're gonna start throwing our name in for like guests, like, because that's what we do. We're in the this is what I do as a podcast. This is what I do. I'm an entertainer. I talk about things, or I do stand up, or and the thing that we bring to the table is that we try to bring awareness and exposure, not just for us, but for groups such as yourself. And when you and we're gonna go, and I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna ask you about the whole Kickstarter thing. How long has your Kickstarter been going? And do you have a link to it? Is it already up? Has it been going for a while?
We have a two-pronged crowdfunding campaign, and the first part of it is through GoFundMe.
Okay.
And the reasons we're going through GoFundMe right now is because for a Kickstarter, we don't have rewards packages we can offer at the moment.
Right.
And we are still reaching out to potential investors and sponsors for the convention. We have one financial investor already who will double our initial startup funding once we hit that goal, and the minimum goal is $10,000. He'll double it to 20, or if we get beyond 10,000, and at the most, he'll double it is to 40 if we hit 20,000. And a lot of people ask, well, where's my money going? What's the money being used for? Well, $5,000 of that has to go to an attorney because it's an adult convention. We want to make sure everything is above board, and we want to basically cover our own asses.
Right.
And so we have to have a legal retainer, and depending on if that ends up being an hourly charge or a flat rate will all depend.
Hold on, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm getting a phone call. Go ahead and keep talking. If I don't, you can.
The other things are having our official artwork and website done. Are having the official Hentaicon.com website. To buy that website link is about $2 to $3,000 itself just for the website name, and we don't want to end up having to go through a roundabout link, because like everybody does when they search, they just want to type in the name of their convention and go straight to it via .com, not a .org. And I understand that, yeah, most conventions are on a non-profit basis and can't go for the .com.
So okay, and so when it do you have initial, like, do you have a time frame? Do you have okay, so you're trying to get the funding right now. Do you have like a date or like a goal, or do you have like a time frame that you want to do it?
Ideally, we would like to have it in 1 year. To a year and a half tops. Again, it all comes down to the quicker we get our funding, the quicker we can get our website, our artwork, everything else done. And because what we need for our investors and potential sponsors is what they're wanting is a media package. They want to be able to see more than just an Instagram, a Facebook page, a Tumblr, and altogether having less than 10,000 likes. That, because they have to run a risk projection on their investment, because we want to get things on more of an official standing basis, so that when we get investors and sponsors, we can promote them. We can let them know, hey, this is what, here's your promotion. Because right now we're doing advertising trade for anyone who supports the convention, who potentially wants to show up. Like when we found out we were going to be on this podcast, we mentioned it on our page, linked the page, and we will again, just to let people know, the convention's open to having anybody attend. And once we're ready to have guests or be able to officially start announcing guests, start having panels.
Mm-hmm.
There are a number of people who who have already voiced, I want to do this kind of panel. We want to have the safe sex panels, sexual awareness panels. Now, just like they have in Japan every year, they have what's called the Iron Penis Festival.
What is that?
It's a convention, or well, I shouldn't say convention. It's a street festival, which is all about sexual health, sexual awareness. There's a long history behind it, and you can find photos of it on our Facebook page, because they sell penis and vagina candy. That is food and things to be eaten that are shaped like a penis, an erect penis or a vagina.
Well, there's lots of foods that are indirectly shaped like penises, like corn dogs.
Exactly, and they carry a giant pink penis through the streets, and women are topless. And that's the thing. The whole thing is about sexual health and awareness. And ideally, yeah, we unfortunately in the United States, sex is more of a taboo subject, as I mentioned before the break.
Well, and I'm sorry to the thing is, like, it is, but I have to I disagree and I agree at the same time, because in the direction that our society is going, like, it's not as taboo anymore as it was back then. And the reason why I say so is because here in Houston, they just announced that they're having their first heavily advertised adult convention, a XXX convention, actual pornography with the adult stars coming down here.
Exactly.
So it is taboo, and when it comes
to taboo, but that's porn on a general basis. Where if you were to say hentai, most people already one of the misconceptions about anime itself is most people assume it's nothing but animated pornography. I worked at Blockbuster back before its unfortunate collapse, where before I worked there, I walked in, and all of a sudden there was this mother started screaming, ranting, and raving at one of the poor employees that was there at the time. And naturally, as just a customer, I walked over just to go, "What's your problem? What's going on?" And they had moved their anime section right next to the kids section. And Blockbuster, unfortunately, they were just renting out basically anything. They just saw animation and assumed for kids. Where nowadays people know better. It's like, do you consider Family Guy, American Dad, Rick and Morty a kid show? No. Those are animated shows for adults. And we all know that. But this woman was ranting and raving about, and I happened to just point at a Dragon Ball title, and I'm like, "Ma'am, this one show has earned more than everybody here in this building will earn in their lifetime." And I'm like, and I got very verbally defensive, and I'm like, "I don't know what issues you've had with anime in the past." And then she explained that one of the titles they had rented had shown a nipple, and that started a whole other debate. And I'm like, about censorship, and me explaining that you know what, your ethical standards are not the same as mine or as the rest of the world. You can state people can stay in their own sheltered bubbles for as long as they want, but eventually the real world is going to smack them in the face.
Right. And we're gonna start wrapping up here. We're gonna this isn't the only podcast we're gonna do with you guys. I had forgot to mention that normally whenever we invite a guest over to do a podcast, it's we do like a 3-part podcast. So we'll definitely be talking with you more in the near future, and hopefully be getting further updates. But as far as like hentai goes, the genre, like as far as your convention goes, I would love for it to be a success, and I would love to be one of the people that throws their name in as a guest. And not only that, but like Geeks 5 Ever, we work our asses off. We don't do shit for free. I mean, I'm sorry, we do shit for free all the time, but we don't what was the word I was saying? Okay, no, we don't just take shit for free and not do anything. I mean, oh my God. So you know, we can do all kinds of things like adult panels, and this is where I'll talk with you more in private about that. Like, you know, my goal is to eventually work with a con. Like I worked with HENTAI-CON. I hosted 20 panels for them because they were starting back up. It was like it was unofficially their first year, even though it's called HENTAI-CON 2. I hosted the most panels, and when it comes to cons, like we definitely try our hard. We don't just want Geeks 5 Ever. This isn't about us. This is about the community and helping spread awareness and helping spread, you know, helping other people be a success. Where like this, you know, normally we're just in Texas, but you know, this is the first time we've reached to somebody outside of the state, and I'm very proud of what I'm trying to accomplish here, because just talking to you alone just means that we're getting awareness, and we're going to help spread awareness, not just for ourselves, but for you as well. And so, like I said, I am repeating myself at this point, but I am going to talk with you and James in the near future. I can do one podcast with just James, and then I can probably do 2 more with you in the near future. Maybe not within the next couple of weeks. We'll give it a couple months, or maybe, you know, maybe in a couple of weeks. Who knows? It just depends on on your schedule and our schedule. But like I said, we will throw our name as far as the con goes, and like when it comes to panels and that. I don't do like iron penis panels, but I do adult entertainment panels, and we do a lot of panels that are widely successful, like the cosplay. We call this one the Super Cosplay Dating Game, and it's a comedy panel, and it's not like your traditional cosplay dating game panel. So there is that. But like, is there anything you would like to say before we end the podcast?
Basically, like he said, we're trying to appeal to a lot more than just anime. And for me, as a gamer, there's not enough gaming, generally speaking, at conventions. And I'm hoping to change this to more of a outwardly kind of game system. Maybe not the what you see at a usual anime convention, but something a little bit more to get people together. And I'm not going to lie, if it goes from there, so be it. But, you know, just try to have fun with it, you know?
Exactly. And yeah, we can definitely do these podcasts as often as you'd like. We can definitely talk more about what we can do for each other to help raise awareness about both. Because as far as I'm concerned right now, Geeks 5 Ever will be at the convention.
All right, that's definitely awesome. Well, you know, and I'm going to add one final note from my part before we go ahead and wrap it up, because this timer's clocking down. You know, as believe it or not, I do not like hentai. It's not my thing. I have nothing against it. It's just that I've never liked pornography as a whole, and I have nothing. But yeah. I am very excited for this con because it doesn't make me uncomfortable, and it also has nothing to do with my religious views. It's just that well, and the thing is, we're excited. This is something we will heavily promote, and like it might, and like the thing is, like Geeks 5 Ever, and this is what we do. This is, and like there's lots of things that I have to do that I don't like. Like I don't like My Little Pony, but I have to do a My Little Pony podcast pretty soon. And that's the thing. We're diverse. We're everything. If you can geek out, if you can nerd out over it, doesn't matter what it is. Music, anime, comics, movies, games, sports too. Sports. We cover that too. We cover wrestling. If you can geek out or nerd out over it, we cover it because that's what Geeks 5 Ever is. It's not Comics 5 Ever. It's not Anime 5 Ever. It's Geeks 5 Ever. And that's why we endorse Hentaicon. We will definitely work with Hentaicon in the near future. James, me and you have worked together in the past 4. It's always a pleasure, man, talking to you and and especially getting you on the show.
No problem, man. Anytime.
And sir, director of Hentaicon, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. We're excited to hear more about this con, see how it goes. We want it to be a success. We will be we can work on things later on, and then we'll definitely heavily advertise you in our future podcast. You know, I'm doing and even for the convention, we'll even do a massive 3-hour podcast just for the con during the con.
Cool. Indeed. One of the things we'll probably have you do is that when you're at conventions, we'll probably have you send out flyers so that the local convention attendees can be aware of it and know that we're on their eyes.
Right. Okay. So thanks, guys. We're officially out of time. Thank you for listening, guys. This is the con director for Hentaicon. James, he's the gaming director. I'm Jesse Goku. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, hit the subscribe button, like this video. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below. Check out our other podcasts. Our very special milestone podcast is coming up with the Geeks 5 Ever under Subsidence, who provided the official theme song for Geeks 5 Ever and this podcast video. Check out our previous videos and stay tuned for further videos. We'll be back with Hentaicon hopefully pretty soon. This is Jesse Goku, and stay classy, everyone.